Welcome to another edition of the Mexican Soccer Show. This is Monday Night Football. Let's go ahead and get started. I am Wiso. Let's start with our question of the day. You saw it on Twitter. Let's ask our analyst, considering Mexico's place in the Hex and the opposition, what is an acceptable amount of points from the two upcoming qualifiers? And we'll start with Mr. Tom Marshall. That's in Guadalajara. How you doing, Tom?
Yeah, good, thanks. Hello, everyone. How's it going? I'm going for... I don't know. Should have thought of it. I should have thought of it more. I'll go 4 points. By the end of the day, yeah, I mean, it's the Azteca. You can't lose in the Azteca. You know, it wouldn't be great. You know, a draw against the States wouldn't obviously be great, but, you know, at the end of the day, it would mean Mexico pretty much in the World Cup.
All right. Naive en la Ciudad de México.
And they already won in Columbus, so they make it 4 out of 6 points, so that's not bad.
Buenas noches, everyone on the show and everyone that's watching from Mexico City. I would agree with Tom. I also say 4 points, but I have a feeling it will be 6. You know, I think the way that the team has been playing in the last months, it should be a 6 out of 6.
Okay, all right. Cesar Hernandez. Oh, by the way, Naive, congratulations on getting some kind of football back into your area. You know, you got the games. You haven't had it for a while. I'm sure you miss going to games, but congratulations. At least the Mexican national team's coming back.
Yeah. The national team is back. That's good news.
Cesar in San Diego. Cesar, come on. Somebody's got to say it. It's got to be 6 points. Come on.
Yeah, I'm going
Cesar.
with 74 points. The practical answer here. No, I know it's boring. I'm gonna go with 4 points here. I think when you consider just how poorly Mexico did in the last World Cup qualifying run, that they only able to get about 11 points over 10 matches. Now 4 games.
Cesar, you there? You guys there?
We're here.
Cesar, the soccer gods didn't like your answer and cut you off on the internet. Hopefully you can get us back. All right. And if you haven't seen, we have a special guest today, Mr. Nate Aburrea, who I think I said it correctly. Nate, before you answer the question, how's it going, brother? Long time no see.
It's going great. I guess if we lose Cesar, you know, it's good to have another San Diego representative just ready to go. So
that's perfect cue in to go in.
That was your mindset all along. You pre-planned all of this. No, it's great to be here. Absolutely love everything that you've done with FootMax Nation, and love this show. Great to be on the show. And as far as the opening question goes, I'm going to be the one to say that Mexican fans should be expecting 6 from these. They absolutely should be expecting 6 from these. I'd say 4 would be acceptable, but I think 6 points is most definitely doable and a reasonable expectation for El Tri to have for this.
There we go. Nate, it's got to be a U.S. fan. Nate is... You know, he's bold. He's going to say you should expect 6. And that's my answer, too. This is the Azteca. These are qualifying. We should expect to get all the points on there. And losing points in the Azteca, I feel, is expectation. Now, if 4 come around, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, but we should expect 6. Cesar, te fuiste. What happened?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. For some odd reason, it just froze. I had to close out actually everything from my computer, so now this is the only tab that's open. So let's see if it works out. Who knows? Maybe I'm freezing right now. I guess we'll figure it out. But what was the last thing you heard me say? Was it 72 points?
72 points, and then you left.
70 points. I'm going to say, so clearly it's not 72 points. I'm going to be boring and like Tom and Naive. I'm going to say that 4 points will be fine here. And when you consider Mexico's last run in World Cup qualifying, where they only gained about 11 points during those first 10 matches, or the only 10 matches. I think now that Mexico has 10 points over the first 4 games, I think 4 points will be fine. And I think even 2 draws wouldn't be the worst thing for the Mexican national team, considering how well they're doing. But I'm going to say 4 points.
We got a little production note. You said 74 the first time. You're already changing your stories.
It's be 63 points by the end of the show. So.
All right. Well, we did ask this question to you guys. If you're on the chat right now, please, go ahead and answer. What's your expectations? And some of you guys on the Mexican Soccer Show on Twitter replied. For example, Carlos Bustami, Cajun Bummy, replying, 6 were the best in CONCACAF, so we have to prove it. Cholo Skull at Cholo Skull 17. I think 4 is acceptable due to needed lineup shuffles. The U.S. game is relatively close to the Confederations Cup debut. I believe versus Portugal. Yeah, you're right. 2 weeks, actually, the 17th, Mexico plays Portugal. Sergio from PVA, Sergio Trist, 10, said 4 is acceptable. I would take 2 and be done. Solidaridad, Joel Tena also said 4 acceptable. 6 were like Snoop Dogg, GIF. Jimmy, voice of Jimmy, also saying 6. And at Ponbolio replying, saying 7 points. Okay. And
I forgot
then
about that secret point that you could get there.
the secret point. And then from the chat here on the YouTube channel, the M Guy 24 1 loss, and I'm gonna have 2013 flashbacked. Also from the chat, Cosme, how's it going? Cosme said 6 points. But to be safe, I'll take 4 points. Honduras will park the bus, and it'll be a boring match. We win 2-1 versus the United States. All right, everyone is at least saying you have to win. Some of us bold saying that, no, I demand to win. But good to hear from everybody there. Really quick, Nate, I forgot to introduce you. Nate, where are you from? How do you know, let our readers, we didn't just pick a random U.S. fan. Nate knows a lot, and he knows the Mexican game, too. This is why he's on the show. Nate.
Most of my Liga MX knowledge comes from the other San Diego guy on this panel, who I'm so privileged to carpool with down to most of the Cholos games down at Estadio Caliente. But yours truly, English language play-by-play broadcaster for the Cholos of Club Tijuana. Also work with a host of different clubs here in Southern California, the SoCal Surf currently, the San Diego Sockers, and all sorts of good stuff here in SD, as well as down in TJ. Both sides of the border, and the beautiful game ties it all together. So again, great to be here. Great circumstances behind the timing of all this. I'm very interested to talk about what's upcoming at the Azteca this coming Sunday. And I did promise you, Wiso, that I would not bring up on the show. So I want to make it abundantly clear that I will not bring up the 2002 World Cup on this show.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. It's there. But I guess we got the win in Columbus, and we can just kind of there. All right, let's go ahead and get started with what we're going to be doing today, talking all about Mexican national team. We'll hurry through that, obviously, with the U.S. having Nate on, and it'll be kind of good to see what we're expecting, especially from the U.S. We'll travel to the U-20s and go into that Jesse Gonzalez drama that we have. What's happening? We have Tom, and that can definitely give us some updates on that. But first, let's talk about the Friendlies, Mexico. Little public service announcement. Remember, these are friendlies. These are preparations. You know, let's not make a mistake in reading too much into anything. I actually saw when Mexico lost against Croatia, a lot of fans just kind of went, meh, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal. I think because a great finale that happened the next day, I think people forgot about it. It's like bad news on Friday and Saturday, and then whatever great news on Sunday, nobody remembers. And then Mexico played against Ireland. So many people are saying a great display for Mexico, but let's hear your thoughts. What stood out from you in the Mexico's win? Tom, you were there in New Jersey in Medford Stadium, a great turnout for some soccer there with an Ireland that's what was it? Were they too weak? With Mexico finally in sync? What were your takes on the game?
No, I mean, I thought Mexico were really good. I mean, I thought they were very good, especially in the first half. And I think moving forward to the summer, I think it's nice boost of confidence. I mean, that's how you want to see the Mexican team play, not just the result, but the way they were passing it around, the confidence that they had. Burrito Hernandez stepping up and saying, I'm here. I mean, I think you guys at Footmex Nation put up a clip saying, a 36 pass clip where Gallardo almost scores from Carlos Vela Baggio. And if you just watch back that clip, I think that is the essence of what Juan Carlos Osorio wants from this team. It's quite patient, but without being slow. You know what I mean? And they're moving it, recycle it from one side to the other, and then they get numerical superiority down the left. They overload the Irish defense, and they get a clear shot on goal. I mean, I thought it was, that sums up what Mexico is trying to do under Osorio. And I think that, I thought it was very positive. I mean, I thought Gallardo really good at left back, Burrito very good, Jonathan Dos Santos, every time he's played recently, he's just raising his hand higher and saying, you must pick me for these big games now. You can't be leaving me out. So yeah, I think that's what I'd pick out. And for me, the other big thing, I think that, you know, the way Carlos Vela played, I mean, he's some real positives. I mean, I just think the ceiling of what Mexico is capable of, this, not just this summer, but the next World Cup, it's just, if you've got Vela on form, it's just so much higher. Because look what he did against Costa Rica. He played that ball to Chicharito from nowhere. You know, you look at what he did against Ireland, you know, setting up Tecatito, I believe, and it's just, he can play that killer pass, and he makes a big difference for Mexico.
He definitely does.
Yeah, I think a big thing too that JC was able to accomplish here is he was able to accomplish 2 goals here. JCO, we're calling him JCO now.
My homie JC.
JC. I mean, he's JC to a couple of people out there, not to me, but but I think he's also able to accomplish experimenting, which we know he's a big fan of. You know, trying some of those little bit of rotations, but also getting that win which provides Mexico with a big boost of confidence, like Tom said before these qualifiers. So I think he was able to experiment, whether we agree with experimenting or not. He was able to do that, and he was also able to get that win before these qualifiers. So I think that was, like I said, whether we agree with those rotations or not, you could argue for and against them, but I think he was able to follow through with that goal of his.
Now we're starting to see that the players are buying into his system. Do you see that already in the field, Juan Carlos Osorio type of team now?
I think overall, when you sort of speak with the players, they do say they have this sense that they like his idea, no, and they agree with the rotations and the competitiveness in the squad, you know, because there's this idea that, you know, your chance is going to come at one point, and you got to be ready. And I think we've seen that in the last 2 camps, you know, the November one and the March one, where I think the points were excellent. You know, I think it was a great start for the national team in the hexagonal, and I think it's evolving. Like Tom says, the addition of Vela and Jonathan into the picture adds a lot to the team. These 2 players weren't in 2016, you know, during the Copa Centenario, and now they add a different level to the team. That Ireland first half was amazing because Guardado wasn't involved, Rafa Marquez wasn't involved, and those 2 are the captains of the team. It tells you a little bit of how far this team can go, and not even Marco Fabian wasn't involved, Giovanni Dos Santos wasn't involved, so we still don't know what those 2 can add to the team. There's a lot of depth in the team. I think that's something that we have to note, especially in the offense. Of course, in the defense, I think there's still a little bit worries, you know, with how Diego Reyes takes care of that position, because it looks like he's going to get important playing time in the next days because of Nestor Araujo's injury, who's recuperating. We'll see how fit he'll be. Probably he might start against the U.S., Nestor Araujo, but we'll have to see that closely. And then the developments, you know, with Miguel Ayun and Salcedo and Luis Reyes as the fullbacks, you know, how is that going to work out? But I think we're seeing the idea already. I think the idea is coming out as we wanted it to come out in the beginning. I mean, he came in 2015. It's 2017 now, and I think we are seeing the advancements definitely in the team.
Nate, what are you seeing from the outside as a U.S. supporter? Obviously, I know you definitely watch all the Mexico games. You're tweeting as far as Mexico coming into the qualifiers, and we'll be moving our conversation towards that. But it's kind of great to see the perspective of someone that follows the U.S. and coming in these qualifiers. How are you seeing this Mexico?
Well, I see it as someone who's been following Juan Carlos Osorio for a long time, or homeboy JC to our friend Cesar Hernandez. As far as the Rotaciones go, I mean, it's something that is just this polarizing concept to so many people, and it's just the root of so much just vile hatred towards Juan Carlos Osorio. And the people who seem to have none of that hateful or resentful mindset are the Mexican players. And that is so apparent right now, where every last man I'm talking a 45-man player pool. Every last man feels like they have a chance. They're going to get a chance to prove themselves, and it's showing. I mean, guys are taking advantage of playing time, whether it's in a friendly. I'm looking forward to seeing Mexico in the Confederations Cup, these qualifiers. The rotations thing is not going to go away, as far as just the constant disagreement of it. but I feel like there's one camp that's in full agreement of the benefits of the very rotation-heavy system, and that camp is the camp of the Mexican players themselves. And you guys are talking so much about Vela, and I haven't seen Vela this inspired as a footballer since he was a teenager. I mean, this is a rejuvenated, revitalized Carlos Vela, and even a guy like Vela who you'd think that the door had just been closed. I mean, the door's been closed on Vela so many times by so many different people with this national team. And Osorio said, you know what? I'm not going to be a closed door guy. It's open up. Come on back. You're informed.
I don't know if I'm reading too much into this with Vela, but if you look at the comments, I'm actually writing a story about it for tomorrow. But you look at the comments from Osorio from last year, and there was a kind of they didn't fit. Osorio basically said, I've spoke to Vela, and we've agreed that he's not going to play at the Copa America. And then Vela came out a couple of months later and said, I was available for the national team. I didn't get picked. There must be better players than me. And it was quite interesting because there was definitely a kind of, just what they said, it wasn't in agreement. And I just wonder if we're going to, if Vela does keep going with this form and does do something special this summer, I just wonder if we're going to look back and think, Osorio's a genius for that, for that management skills to say, you know what, Vela, you're not playing in the Copa America. Let's see how hungry you are. Let's see how much you want to be with this national team. Instead of what used to happen with Vela, where he would be on the bench for Arsenal, not even playing, but walk into the Mexican national team. And I think that fits in with Osorio's philosophy of competition, which is part of the rotation strategy. And telling even somebody like Carlos Vela, and he did the same with Giovanni Dos Santos.
Yeah.
You haven't got your place. If you start messing around and you don't come here with the right attitude, you're not going to get in my team. And I think we might look back on this and say Osorio has dealt with this really, really well for a player. Like I'll stress again, that can be absolutely key for Mexico,
especially for a player who wasn't exactly happy about his time with the Mexican national team for a while, who wasn't even involved with the Mexican national team. So if he is able to do that, that would be quite incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. No, just another point. Yep. Just a quick point. I think also the group of Mexican players. I do think Osorio's won them over, but I also think there's a realization within the core group. These are all players in the prime now. You look at Ochoa, Guardado, Herrera, Jonathan Dos Santos, Chicharito. Hector Moreno, Layun, like the list goes on. These players know they're in the prime. They know this next World Cup is their big opportunity. If Mexico, if they're going to do something in the green shirt, then it's going to be this next World Cup. And I think that's brought them together as well. There's kind of a kind of general realization and kind of, and I think a team spirit that let's do it because this is our opportunity.
Yeah, and real quick, since 2014, when Vela made the return against the Netherlands over there in Amsterdam, every time Vela starts with the national team, Mexico doesn't lose. They haven't lost a game when Vela starts.
Well, that's not very often. That's not very often, though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's there. It happened in the Gold Cup. It was a shake in 2015, but there was no loss there. They went to extra times. But especially if we look at now, since he returned in 2016 in November, I mean, it's just different. The team looks totally different when he's on the field. I mean, I think no one can argue against that. I mean, I think it's a big difference when you have Vela and Tecatito on the wings. I mean, it gives you another dimension.
No. And I think I was just looking at that as like, well, it hasn't been that many. I think how many goals does he have? I think maybe 19 with the national team or 16 or something around there in the teens.
I think it's 53 appearances. So his ratio is actually lower than what his ratio is in La Liga with Real Sociedad, which in theory, when you're playing mainly against CONCACAF opposition, Vela should be banging in more goals for Mexico than in La Liga.
Well, I think he's going to start having chances to do so because I think Vela is going to keep this form going through the summer and just wrapping up on what Osorio has done here and the point that Tom brought up. He's humbled this player base with this next man up concept, and he's created, at least in my opinion, an added sense of camaraderie around the Mexican camp through competition within the squad, and I think Vela is just yet another example of that, where he's taken a guy who had this prima donna reputation and was above anything that he looked at as beneath him, and he's even humbled that man and made him more of a hard worker and given him a rejuvenated sense of confidence as a footballer. So credit to JCO.
This is what Osorio said after the Costa Rica win about Vela. He said, Vela's understood the reality that football's a short career and you've got to take advantage as best you can. He's understood that this is a team game, and it's a lot easier to win a game with everybody than six or seven other players. Stressing also that he's now a father. He's 28 years old, and I think I think that's another side of it. I think he's a lot more mature now. And against Ireland, I even wrote in my notes during the game. I wrote Vela tracking back, tackling. I was slightly shocked.
He has most definitely matured. He has become more of a team player, and you can see. I think that was one of the highlights for me in that Ireland match was his distribution of the ball and how creative and how fantastic it was. But yeah, no, he is becoming much more of a team player. And like Tom said, no, there's a lot more mature side to Vela, and you would hope so, especially with the Confederations Cup and the World Cup coming up.
Yeah, maybe now Giovanni's back in the squad, he'll lose it again.
All right, well, it's good to see, obviously, the Vela talk, Tecatito, just a lot of talent that we saw against Ireland. And on the chat, everyone's just kind of saying there's still, Giovanni, what we have to see, Fabian, Chucky Lozano. I mean, who knows, right? Raul Jimenez, who had, obviously played great, in what we're looking at. It looks like everyone may not have had the greatest season in Europe for those players that we were talking about before that, but are coming into this qualifiers in a good shape. Yeah, the Croatia loss, which I would have said Mexico 0, Diego Reyes 2. I did tweet that out because it was just, but I'm liking that. I really do think that this team is finally in sync with what Juan Carlos Osorio, and I don't think we're going to see as many rotations as much as we saw on the Copa America.
You sure about that?
Yeah, and I feel like the reason why Juan Carlos Osorio was doing that was because these players were not understanding what Juan Carlos Osorio was trying to do. And Martín del Palacio had a great video, if you have a chance to follow him on Facebook, on what this Mexico team is looking for, what the hand of Juan Carlos. And he said something very important, that he's trying to do something with this team that hasn't been done before. And once he sees that there might be somebody else that can do better in that position, he's rotating them and to different types of teams. So obviously, when if it falls through the cracks, when something goes wrong, it goes horribly wrong. And we saw that with Chile. But when something is right and the players are in and they've practiced that system, that high pressing system of having 3 men around, one of the defenders, then you can start seeing that. I mean, that's the old Bielsa kind of way. Ricardo Lavolpe tried to do it, in that 4-4-3. So I'm liking it, and we shouldn't really take, the Ireland, obviously the competition, even though they did beat an Uruguay over there in Dublin 3-1, different squad, I know, but I think going into positives.
Yeah, the only thing about the rotations that I don't, I understand the criticism, but let's not forget that, for example, the Chile game, what's Osorio being criticized for? The Chile game. Mm-hmm. And if you look at that team that he put out, the thing that strikes me is that it was the best team. I mean, maybe you could argue 1 or 2 players, but for me, it's not like, I don't think it was just the case that the players didn't understand what he was getting at. I just think it all fell apart. But I think if, another manager would have been in charge, it would have been a similar team.
I agree, Tom. I think just to play devil's advocate, I think people did mention a big factor in this was the rotation of the goalkeepers.
Yeah, the goalkeepers.
Which kind of confused and kind of didn't give a lot of confidence to that back line. I agree with you, Tom, but I think that's something that a lot of people have brought up.
Something funny that when I was looking at it, it's like when he went back to what everybody wanted, Mexico lost 7-0. But when he kept with his rotations and weird, schemes and, his random players in different places, Mexico won. But when he went back to what we all wanted, finally, when that squad came out in Chile, we're like, that's exactly what 90% of the country wanted. These guys on top, the 4 in the back, and then we lost. We got killed.
But then again, also something to stress is a year has gone by from that, and I think there's new actors in this team right now that weren't in that team. I mean, I think Salcedo, Jonathan, Vela. That's going to change a lot of the panorama.
Hernandez.
Araujo, I think, is a more complete defender now than he was a year ago. Those are factors that I think will play an interesting role in the next days, and also the Confederations Cup, in determining how far this team can go when facing opponents of top caliber, like Portugal, who's the European Championship, and even Russia, who will be local, will be the home team. And that will also be a big test for Osorio's Mexico.
Yeah, I just really hope Mexico play Chile again. I just think that'd be perfect. And
I'm down.
And listening to recent interviews with Osorio, I think he's also changed with that loss, and I think he'd approach the game differently now. Yeah. For example, I just think he'd be much more pragmatic, because he said before the game against Chile and afterwards we tried to go toe to toe with him, and then we lost out because they've got Vidal, who's for me an elite player. They've got Alexis Sanchez, another elite player, and Mexico don't necessarily have those players that can do that. And they played badly, and everything went wrong. But I wouldn't be surprised if this time he'd change it and like kind of play two holding midfielders, two more defensive midfielders, and keep it tighter. But I'm just, it'd fascinate me to see how Osorio would approach that a semi-final against Chile, for example.
Well, Mexico will be playing almost a year. I think it was the 18th of June in that 7-0 loss of last year, and the 17th of June if Mexico plays Portugal. So it's already. We're gonna see Ronaldo coming in as Ronaldo with Ronaldo. So we'll see how Diego Reyes marks him, huh?
Oh dear. Let's change subject.
Sorry, change subject. All right. Let's see what's Mexico's playing it's coming up. It looks like we were just done with the two friendlies. Mexico is flying all over the US, finally comes back. They're at the Centro de Alto Rendimiento in Mexico City, and they're playing Honduras. Honduras, not the greatest Honduras we've seen in a long time. I'm thinking of players like Rambo de Leon. I'm thinking of those great, tall, physical players that can shoot, that have always given problems. The Aztecaso 4 years ago, remember, it came from Honduras, and a totally different El Tri. I get it, but Honduras, a totally different team, no costly, as we remember. Those types of player that Mexico, it cost them to go against. It's coming in with only 4 points. 3 of those games out of the 4 points in 4 games, 3 of those games were home. They're hurting. They're needing something positive in this, and a tie, obviously, but even a win. How do you guys see that match? And then we'll go into the U.S. But Naive, especially you in Mexico City, that you're looking at it, you analyze teams that are coming in. What do you think? Is it going to be your normal park the bus and Honduras is just going to wait for it and see if they can come back on the counter? Because I don't see that many players in that Honduras team, or are they going to be desperate enough to try to get some points on at the Azteca?
They got a scoreless draw over here at Azteca in the first part of before the hexagonal. So I think they have that in mind. The preparation.
They're already qualified though, right? Mexico's already qualified. We were like, we don't want to get hurt.
There's this battle, between Pinto and Osorio that is really noticeable. There's some hate there, and prove, that he is the boss in CONCACAF after what he did with Costa Rica. Of course, different stories with Honduras. I think this Honduras team is really young. Their main threat could be Albert Ellis, who's over there in the Dynamo and has been doing well in MLS in his first season, after playing with Monterrey for a couple of months and now in MLS. But I do see this game where, it's going to be that difficulty, the teams that defend well, have basically a 5-4-1 kind of deal. And how are you going to break that, And I think that was a problem with Chepo de la Torre. It was like, how the heck are you going to break that tight defense? And it was kind of the same story in the LAXX. But this time around, I just think that we're going to see a highly offensive El Tri. It could be like a 4-2-4 kind of deal. I think Osorio did that against El Salvador in 2015 when Bell actually played in that match. So I think something of that, So I think it could be something of that sort, no? With 4 attackers, maybe the list is, you have a huge list to pick out from. It's just nailing those 4.
And it's that 4-2-4 almost becomes, in real terms, a 2-4-4. You got the 2 centre backs,
because they're always
like push up, and it's extremely attacking formation. But I think Honduras are a decent team. I think they've got the potential to make it difficult. But I agree with Naive. I just think Mexico right now are more confident and they've got players that are in a bit better form. So I think if you put Vela in there and Chuckytito in there, you'd back them over 90 minutes to break down the Honduran defense. Whereas, going back to the game in, what was it, September, coming off the back of that loss against Chile, I don't know. I don't think Honduras is that bad a team. I think they're always going to be organized under Pinto, and if they can keep it Mexico scoreless in the first half, then they'll grow in confidence as the game goes on. But yeah, you got to back Mexico at this stage to find a goal within 90 minutes.
But that's a big part right there of holding Mexico scoreless for the first half and what that could do, because I watched this Honduras team get annihilated by the United States in person back in late March in San Jose. And the U.S. got an early goal in that match. The U.S. went up 1-0 in the 5th minute. For the next half hour or so, people might forget, because that score line was just so majestic to U.S. fans. People who actually watched that game, the next 30 minutes were end to end, and Honduras had a couple of chances to get one back in that game. And for that reason, and then once the dam broke, oh my goodness, the dam broke, and it was game over, and competition went out the window. And with that in mind, I'm completely with Tom and really with everybody on this panel. I think here it's in terms of, call it 4-2-4, call it heavy metal from minute one, full throttle, whatever cliche you want to use here. They need to go attack from minute one. That opening quarter of an hour is going to be huge in this game, because Honduras is desperate to find any way to look at themselves confidently with the way that this, at least the recent matches in this hexagonal, have gone, and especially even though there was another one in between, going back to that U.S. match and losing 6-0 and getting humiliated the way they did in that game. If they can keep a clean sheet for 45 minutes, they're going to go into that dressing room a confident bunch going, hey, we could easily keep up this fortress for another 45 minutes. So with that in mind, if I'm Osorio, I'm 4-2-4, heavy metal, guns blazing from minute one. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to see some agile options there for Mexico. I'd like to see maybe even Dam and Lozano given some opportunities there. Dam and Tecatito. I mean, Mexico has a wealth of wingers there, but maybe some of those quicker backup guys. And I think Dam is a perfect example. That I'd like to see him just hitting like Honduras with a lot of pace. And just to kind of talk about what everyone else has mentioned. I mean, clearly, Honduras isn't a terrible side. I know they lost 6-0 to the United States. This is a side that won the Copa Centroamericana in January, but since then they've only had one win in their last 5 matches in all competitions. So yeah, I mean, and you just look for the roster, just man for man, you got to be supporting Mexico here, and of course a big later. But I mean, it was also the Estadio Azteca, which Mexico's clearly the home side here.
All right, one thing that I haven't seen are we always start hearing the Honduras fans and the Honduras media with trying to spice this game up, el Aztecaso, with something. I think
we'll hear something within the coming days.
Yeah, I'm just it's gonna be 2 days, but no, I think last time was, remember the bus? Was it? Oh no, that was actually Mexico's. So I'm always looking for DS. I think is that the Diario with some kind of thing about killing Mexico or something like that, or the Aztecaso. I haven't seen very often, so that could be a sign that they're not as confident, and usually start hearing that. But all right, quick question: you're up 2-0 first half. Do you start resting players for the U.S.?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think you might rest him from the start.
No,
he might be depending on.
Se tienen que jugar los juegos, Tom. Remember.
Yeah, but think about the turnaround time, and when you put it, with Osorio's philosophy, they're going to fly right after the game as well to I think they're going to spend a night in Amsterdam, which is dangerous, and then before going to Russia.
Marco Fabian, just keep an eye on Marco Fabian. Everything's going to be okay.
But yeah, no, I think they're obviously going to be 2 different teams. I mean, I don't know how different, but I think if there's any doubts about the players, then they won't play against Honduras, and they'll save them from the US game, I imagine, anyways.
Yeah, Mexico has that depth too. I mean, I was just talking about the wingers there. But you can start with Lozano up there. You can start with Aquino up there. You can start with Dem. You can start, and that's still resting a Vela. That's still resting at Tecatito. I think Mexico has various options in the attack to utilize against Honduras. So I wouldn't be surprised. It would be interesting to see what Osorio does goalkeeping wise too. I know we talked about that earlier today about rotation goalkeepers. If you'll stick with maybe. I mean, who knows if we'll go with Ochoa in this match, maybe save Talavera for the match against the United States. I think that's be something to
Ochoa
keep
started
an eye
for both, right? Ochoa started on both of the last friendlies.
The Friendlies.
Cota.
But I think on paper, in terms of the goalkeeping position, Osorio would go for Talavera against both those teams, because I think Honduras and the States are both good at in the air set pieces, and I think Osorio in those games he's gone for a Talavera.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Naive maybe. I don't know. The other thing I was just thinking about then, maybe he'll rest players against the States. Maybe he'll put the best team against Honduras, get the 3 points, and then see where everyone's at.
Come on.
If you get the 3 points, 13, you're pretty much through.
Jesus, this is the States, though. Yeah.
It's difficult because we have also
the Columbus, so.
We got the case.
Yeah, we got to the Columbus. All right.
US Vela and Guardado against the States. I mean,
the Rafa Marquez case, it will be interesting to see, where he plays, or if he's going to play. And
Rafa looked old.
I mean, and then also with Hector Herrera. I think Hector Herrera is one of Osorio. He gives them opportunities all the time. But, I think it will be interesting to see there how many minutes he gives to Hector Herrera. Through the 180 minutes, is he going to play a lot, or is he going to rest in one game and start in the other? But for example, someone like Giovanni Dos Santos will start against the U.S. because Giovanni Dos Santos knows Bruce Arena, no? Bruce Arena coach Giovanni. So I think I do see Giovanni starting against the U.S., but maybe not against Honduras, for example.
That's the unfortunate thing about Herrera, and it is, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see if he starts, just because now I feel like I've become accustomed to him just being underwhelming. It's not even us expecting him to be better now. It's like we don't get that same magic that we used to get from him. We don't get that cool little turn, that quick little pass. It's just it's really unfortunate. Clearly Osorio seems to like him because he continues to utilize him. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe that last match against against Ireland, and which I think he didn't really do that well either. Maybe that was his last chance. Maybe he will be benched, but we'll see. Especially when Mexico has so many options, not only in the winger position, but also the midfield. Like all over the midfield, Mexico has plenty of options that could take over Herrera's position. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how. I mean, the argument for Jonathan Dos Santos, I think, is now quite loud. If you play the midfield three, you've got one holding midfielder. And then you've got, one right-sided midfielder and then Guardado. I think you can make the up, but I'm not sure. I mean, Pineda's the other one, but I'm not sure if he's, qualified against the States. I don't know. Confederations Cup against Portugal. I'm not sure. Herrera's been there and played the Champions League. He's been at World Cup. I don't know.
I think we'll see a very, very similar squad as it was against Columbus in the U.S.
Yeah, we'll see that. I think you're right, and I think in general with this Mexican team, it's like, I know we debate a lot about the players and the squads, but if you look at it, he's actually quite consistent. Pretty much the European players are always in the squad, and there's 5 or 6 others that don't really change that much. All right, when there's a B team friendly, then obviously other people get a chance, but I don't think this Mexico team is going to change very much from now to the World Cup. I think we could all write a starting 11 for that first game in the World Cup next year, and we'd get 8 out of the 11.
Yeah, it's the backbone of the Europeos, which are doing well in that sense with Mexico. We'll see how it goes. Well, on the chat, everyone's fighting. FYI, I mean, everyone is it's for like the last 20 minutes, just kind of reading on there, and guys, calm down. It's like one person started with the Osorio 7-0. They're going back and forth. Some of them are saying be careful with Honduras because they've always play dirty. I think the physical game that we'll see, but we don't see that much. Although I think Chuckytito did get injured with Honduras, if I remember.
It was back in Houston. No, but I think it was in Houston. I think the pitch was horrible, though. I think
the mala suerte logo in the background. That's what everyone remembers. Great marketing by the good hands at Allstate, I think it is. All right, let's talk the U.S. This is it, guys. Mexico, U.S. It's kind of already here. We're always looking for this game, but just wait till the U.S. gets here at the Azteca. We'll show them. It's a little different. It's a little different this time because Mexico won it already in Columbus. It's kind of like I see a lot of Mexico fans a little bit more. They're not taking this as this is our must win to show that we're the kings or our dominance against the U.S. and that's help. And this is why we have Nate, a good friend of the Mexican Soccer Show, has joined the Mexican Soccer Show live at some of the games. I know in Copa America you were there in San Diego. But before we get into discussions on that, tell us, what do we need to know about the U.S. coming in? All we keep hearing is, the wonder kid from Werder Bremen. He keeps scoring. This is finally somebody. They didn't hype him up. The hype is real. A new coach with Bruce Arena coming back, who knows how to beat the U.S., beat Mexico in the U.S. I might add, because he never did it in the Azteca. But tell us, what do we need to know? And as a fan, and also as a journalist for the U.S., how confident are you with this team going into Mexico, Nate?
Well, as far as the Wonder Kid goes, I'll start off with the Wonder Kid. You can call him Pulisic. You can call him, his name really should be pronounced Pulisic, but he wants to be called Pulisic, so we're going to call him Pulisic. So with that being said, Christian Pulisic, as an 18-year-old, is the best player on this team. And I've gotten a lot of flack from people for saying that, and it's a very simple, blunt statement. He's an 18-year-old, and he is the best player on this team. And there were so many people who were like, hey, don't overhype the kid, let him groom naturally. Bruce Arena said in his press conference before the Honduras match in San Jose, I'll never forget this. It was such a great Bruce Arena moment where he goes, well, I'm anxious to see Christian try to adapt, to the level of the international game. And I'm sitting there a few rows in that press conference going, adapt to the international game, adapt to the power of the CONCACAF hexagonal. We're talking about a young man who has scored goals in the Champions League. We're talking about a man who has played meaningful minutes in Champions League quarterfinals for Borussia Dortmund. I mean, this is an 18-year-old man in so many ways, and he's the most talented player on this team, and he's someone, I know it's tough to put so much pressure on someone who should just be graduating high school, but he is the guy in this game. As far as creative potential for the U.S. in this game, he's absolutely the guy, and we watched the entirety of that friendly on Saturday night against Venezuela, and I was really excited by the lineup that Bruce Arena put out for that game. It was a lineup I feel like I've been waiting years for, as someone, not only a fan of this U.S. national team, but just a fan of beautiful attacking soccer, at least giving us the potential for beautiful, flourishing attacking soccer. There were a lot of attacking weapons, a lot of attack-minded players on the field at the same time, seeing Clint Dempsey, Darlington Nagbe, Christian Pulisic, all on the field at the same time. Bobby Wood back healthy out there. And we watched the entirety of that match, and I walked away going, Christian Pulisic is the only guy who can make a meaningful difference in terms of applying skill to a competitive desire and the ability to turn footballing skill into a win. Christian Pulisic is the guy. It needs to run through him, and this is a big game for the young man. This is his first time in Estadio Azteca, a stadium where, it should be said, Mexico have not scored a goal against the United States in over 180 minutes of soccer, one of those being in the 2013 hexagonal, the other being in we'll call it the Aztecaso, the friendly back in August of 2012. But you have to go back to 2009 for the last time that Mexico even scored a goal against the United States at Azteca. So they got the monkey off their back scoring the goal in Columbus with what Layun did. And of course, getting the win in Columbus was huge. And I love kind of wrapping this all up here. I have to share this because I have picked up that vibe where this game almost doesn't seem as big as it should be. Fans and what it always was to Mexican fans growing up. This was the statement game. This was, you're coming in to the hallowed grounds of Estadio Azteca. And maybe it's because of the fixture pileup. Maybe it's because of the Confederations Cup, the Gold Cup, the Hex, all the U-20 World Cup. I mean, all this stuff happening kind of all at once. Maybe that feeds into a little bit of what you're talking about, Wiso, as far as almost the lack of prestige that this game that should mean so much to so many people and has meant so much to so many people, why it seems like almost less important. And I've always said this. I've shared this with Cesar before, and U.S. fans laugh at me when I say this, but this just shows kind of a bit of how I was brought up and what this fixture means to me. If you offered me as a U.S. fan a guarantee, two possible guarantees, that the U.S. would make the semifinals of the next World Cup, or they would beat Mexico in Azteca, I would take the latter
You're crazy, Nate.
last time. That's how much this means to me. That's how much this means to me.
I would rather lose against the U.S. in the next
I'll lose. I'll
seven World Cups if Mexico can be in the
I'll take a
semifinals.
loss to U.S. 100 times if that meant us.
It's that rivalry. You know something that came up, Nate,
Start
on
with
the
the
chat?
quarterfinals.
On the chat, yeah. On the chat, Nate, Joel writes, I reckon Bruce meant adapt to playing with less talented teammates. That's
it's true. No, it's a funny remark from Jolie, but it's absolutely true, and it applies perfectly to this conversation where I feel like there's a lot more pressure on his shoulders to be that virtuoso kind of guy for the U.S. national team that he doesn't have to be. He's a puzzle piece for Borussia Dortmund. He's a skilled footballer on a team of skilled footballers, and I don't know if that's – I've struggled with this so much with Pulisic, where I don't know if it's more a compliment to Christian Pulisic or just an utter damning of every other player on this U.S. national team that a 17-year-old, now an 18-year-old, can waltz into the camp, and he's the best player.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, if he was working into the Argentina squad, it wouldn't be that situation, you know. Obviously, you know, he'd be on the fringe still, coming on as sub, getting minutes.
But if he was walking into the Mexico squad, Tom?
If he was into walking into the Mexico squad, yeah, it'd be a big deal.
It's Chuckytito.
You know, it would be a big. No, I think it's more than Chuckytito. I think
it's a lot more than Chuckytito.
I think it's definitely more than Chuckytito. As much as I don't want to admit that now.
He's obviously
no, I'm just telling you. I would just see the type of player that Chuckytito isn't that. I'm not comparing the two, but
no, we remember when we had Giovanni and he was coming from Barcelona. I mean, I remember how that felt. That felt huge. I mean,
but Giovanni Dos Santos. I mean, with all due respect, Nate, Giovanni Dos Santos wasn't scoring goals in the Champions League.
No, there's a different mentality. There's different mentality when I compare Pulisic and Giovanni. I mean, I think we have to admit that as people that follow the Mexican game. I mean, there's a lot of maturity from Pulisic at 18 years old.
Yeah.
You know, that we didn't see in Giovanni. Giovanni was a spectacular talent that didn't have the maturity that quickly. Now, with that being said, I think the U.S. has to find a great supporting cast to support that talent, you know, because, you know, you're still relying on Bradley and Dempsey to create the opportunities and to dish the balls out to Pulisic. You know, you need to find other players. Kelly Acosta seems like an interesting player there that could potentially erupt in these next days because he did well against Pachuca in the Conca Champions. It was spectacular to watch him. Yeah. So that I think is a development of the game and the U.S. in itself. And I think, you know, Pulisic still has a lot to learn as well. I mean, he's 18 years old. I mean, at the end of the day, he still has a lot to learn, and not only in the national team level, but also at the club level.
I think we also have to mention. I know it's really, it's like, you know, it's key to focus on a player like that. But I think when you look at that last qualifier, that 0-0 draw in the Azteca, the key player for them was Omar Gonzalez, who has now refound that form. And I think he's that key player to be keeping an eye on here for Mexico. He was that guy who was basically holding on to that shutout for the U.S. men's national team. So I think that's another player that Mexico needs to keep an eye on, especially since he's going to be somewhat familiar. I'm not going to say with you know, obviously not the core European players, but maybe a couple of Ziga Meki players. Like, he'll know exactly how to defend against those guys because he's gone up against them.
Well, I don't know if Omar Gonzalez is going to start in this game, and we go back to that 2013 game. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch. That night in March of 2013, Omar Gonzalez and Matt Beasler just suddenly became Maldini and Nesta for 90 minutes, and it was the most mind-boggling thing I'd ever seen. It was one of the greatest tandem center back performances that I've ever seen definitely from any U.S. men's national team, but really just in the last few years. That performance in 2013 at Azteca. But with what Bruce is liking right now, he used Omar in the Honduras and the Panama match. Omar didn't start in this friendly against Venezuela with John Brooks still in there. Jeff Cameron likes to place, or Bruce Arena likes Jeff Cameron playing centrally in defense for this U.S. team. So there's a chance that as much as great of a story as it would be, there's a chance that Omar Gonzalez might not actually feature from the start in that match. I am really interested to see Jorge Villafana, who could very well start at left back in that game. So you'd have a four-man back line potentially from left to right, Villafana, Brooks, and Cameron, and then DeAndre Yedlin, who's coming off a fantastic season with Newcastle, helping to get them back. to the Premier League. So seeing Villafaña starting a game, hypothetically, Villafaña starting a hexagonal qualifier for the U.S. against Mexico in Azteca. I mean, as journalists here, I mean, there's so many different ways you could go with that story, and it's a quite intriguing one. And one last thing is the performance of Michael Bradley. And Michael Bradley needs to be playing, whether it's in Azteca or whether it's anywhere, for my money, needs to be playing as a number 6. And that's it. Like, end of story. Center, defensive, midfield, very much the position that prolonged the career of Rafa Marquez. And they're two very, very different individuals, obviously, but it's a similar story in terms of Bradley needs to own that role. And we saw it against Honduras, and it worked oh so well against Honduras. And obviously, this is an entirely different opposition in Mexico and an entirely different stadium in the Azteca. But Bradley in that number 6 role, I think, gives the U.S. the best chance to win. And we'll see what Clint Dempsey can bring to the table. That night against Honduras, Christian Pulisic, he made Clint Dempsey 25 again. It was incredible seeing a 34-year-old link up with an 18-year-old, seeing generations intertwine the way they did, with Dempsey scoring a hat trick that night against Honduras, set up by Pulisic on 2 of those goals. So look out for Pulisic and Dempsey to have a little tandem play in this match. I'm hopeful that they could go and try to go toe-to-toe with Mexico, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think everybody on this panel knows that I'm not going to say there's going to be a park the bus mentality from Bruce Arena, but I don't think it's going to be guns blazing heavy metal football.
No, I mean, I don't know. I think the interesting point there. I mean, I don't know. I'll just throw this out just as a theory that's just come through my head. But I think most people would agree Mexico are on top right now in this rivalry. How much of that is down to the fact that most of Mexico's players, or the core group of the squad, are in the prime right now? You look at the group of players, and I think what's happened with the US is that you've got that group who are kind of on the way out, or already out. Howard, Dempsey, Donovan, Beasley, and then you've got the next group of players who I don't think are quite at that level. I'm talking like I think Bradley is, but Bedoya, Fabian Johnson, even Beasley, and players like that. They're good players, but they're not at that level of that generation. Then I think you've got another young generation coming up, with the Acosta, Morris, obviously Pulisic, maybe Brooks in there as well. But I just think there's kind of like, that they're not there yet. And I think in a couple of years they will be. But I don't know, I'm just throwing out the theories. You could perhaps explain what's happened with this rivalry, i.e. Mexico have been on top for the last couple of years through that.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a little bit of that too, because I mean, one of the reasons why we were we're waiting, and I mentioned it earlier, we're waiting for Mexico to play the U.S. in the Azteca was because we were getting killed in Columbus, and usually we would play Columbus first, in the games, and it's just how it's been. So, and you said that, Tom. When I asked, I got a chance to talk to Osvaldo Sanchez, and I got a chance to interview Borghetti, and both said that the U.S. has always had. Right now, their transition period in the way that they see their players, at least. Where is that next generation coming in? You're starting to see the very, very young Pulisic, but it was lacking that. Could we go back to the players at MLS and not seeing so many players in Europe? Nate, that's kind of a topic that I wanted to and we don't have to go into a lot of it, but is it affecting that level of play? At least in the levels, because you're saying your best guy. Well, he's playing in Europe. He's playing one of the best teams too. That's out there.
I think it has. I think to put it quite straightforward here. Yeah, it has. It's affected guys who would have already been on the down slope. In my opinion, a lot of people throw the massive shade in this argument gets thrown at Clint Dempsey and Michael Bradley for their returns back to Major League Soccer as they were, in their primes in Europe, and were both doing very meaningful things in top flight European leagues. And yeah, they both did come home where there would have been a couple more years potentially of top flight European football for Clint Dempsey and Michael Bradley. Josie Altidore, another guy who just had, European safari after European safari, and it never quite worked out from stop to stop. There was a very nice stop in Holland along the way at AZ Alkmaar for Josie Altidore, but after a while, I mean, it must get tiresome, and we must think of the human side of the game. And look, I got in a interesting Twitter debate about this very topic with Naive and a few other people. This was regarding Mexican players going to Europe, and one point that I feel like is forgotten by so many people is truly the human side of the game, and what's right for the human being at that point in life. And there shouldn't be this uniform policy of it's better for U.S. men's national team players to be in Europe, or it's better for them to be in Major League Soccer. It's worse one way or the other. I don't think there's a uniform policy either way. I think it's very important on a human level and on a footballing level to assess each individual case by case. But there is a very good case to be made that this has hindered the U.S. men's national team, at least in the immediate sense.
But I think if you go to the very elite level, then it does affect. I use the example of tennis. Like, for example, tennis. You got Nadal, what's he called? Murray, Djokovic, and Federer. And obviously, they would have all been very good players without each other. But obviously, playing each other all the time, that level of competition just kept pushing them up notch by notch. And yeah, I agree. And I know what you're saying, definitely with the human side. But I think at the very, very top level, it has to be, you have to be playing for those top clubs, like Pulisic is doing. He's getting better because he's training every day at Borussia Dortmund, and he's, playing in Champions League games against defenders who know how to defend.
I think that Champions League factor is a massive, massive, massive one. And I was talking about the other day too. Just like, clearly a player in Mexico could still develop in Mexico, thrive in Mexico, but you just can't compare that to
top flight.
Training like the training with Bayern Munich, to training with like a Real Madrid. I know, like, bringing in the human aspect of it is just, I mean, that's an entirely different conversation at all, like it's all together. But I mean, if you want to reach that level, like, you have to be playing at that top league. You have to be playing in Europe. And
I get it, Nate. All right, if all of a sudden right now Giovanni Dos Santos goes to Greece, no one's applauding that. It wasn't like Pulido, where like, Pulido's going to Olympiacos, where okay, or the Ukraine. But even then, you give them a different type of game, a totally different perspective on how to play and get that out. The Rangers, move. You have all that. It's not like, I think it's good for them to go. They're on their way down to the careers, I feel. But when I see what the Tecatito did, what I see what Layun did, it's a stepping stone into a bigger club. I think that's
Oh, it's a challenge. And look, as far as U.S. players that I think are in the best form right now, look, there's no coincidence that I'm talking about DeAndre Yedlin, even Fabian Johnson, obviously Pulisic, even Bobby Wood, and guys who have been in top flight European leagues for the last year and playing in European competition. Yeah, they're the guys who are in the best form. I mean, there's no debating that, and they are the players who I think have the biggest, most potential to potentially do some damage in this Mexico game.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get to it. A little question that we have. Mexico beats the U.S. in the Azteca. That will mean, Naive?
Ticket to the World Cup, a celebration.
If they beat Honduras too,
I think that's important to note, actually, there with what happens in the Honduras game.
Yeah,
if El Tri beats Honduras, I think in Mexico it's gonna generate. It's like, oh shoot, we can actually win the ticket.
If they win both games, they have 16 points, and they already secured the repechaje.
I mean, but imagine two wins to go to Russia with 2 wins in the bag. I mean, I think that is something that I think the team wants in general, all the players. I think if they beat the US, it's a ticket to the World Cup, definitely.
Cesar, same question. If Mexico defeats the US in the Azteca, that will mean?
Well, I was exactly Naive's answer, so I'm going to try to create a new one here. So I think we'll see a little bit more experimentation and upcoming qualifiers after that. I'm saying after the Confed Cup, after the Gold Cup. I think we're accustomed to taking these qualifying matches so seriously. But if we basically have that spot almost guaranteed, or basically like we just said, guaranteed for at least that playoff match, then yeah, I wouldn't be very surprised if Osorio tries a few different options, tries a few different, maybe some young players in those World Cup qualifiers that follow.
Nate, as a U.S. fan, and answer it that way, if Mexico defeats the U.S. in the Azteca, that means?
It would mean there's still quite the mountain to climb for the United States to qualify for the 2018 World Cup in Russia. And who knows, it could come down to, I don't know, San Layun, on the final day. Maybe it'll be a little full circle thing and somebody will score a goal for Mexico and rescue the States. No, if they lose, that game against Trinidad and Tobago in Colorado beforehand this coming Thursday is huge. They have to get 3 points from that. They'd be on 7 from 5 going into Azteca. And if you're on 7 from 5 going into Azteca, getting a draw in Azteca would be a huge result. If somehow they slip up against Trinidad, suddenly you're looking at going in and playing toe-to-toe football with Mexico kind of being a necessity because points are at a premium at that point. So if they are to lose to Mexico, it's still a mountain to climb for the United States.
And this is how the hex kind of goes in. It creeps up on you, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. It's what happened in Mexico in 2013. And those ties, they feel that they're not that big of a deal, but losing points at home, even if it's a tie against Trinidad, you get a tie against Trinidad here for the U.S., I'd feel some pressure into going into Mexico and getting that. And if they don't win in Mexico, you only have 1 point and already looking to go. You still have to play Costa Rica. And even though it's maybe not the same Costa Rica, but it gets a little harder. Tom, I'll ask you the question. If the U.S. national team defeats Mexico in the Azteca, that will mean?
Well, it'll just be a blow to pride more than anything. I mean, it depends how the game goes, everything. Maybe the first time the US win in a proper game, like in qualifying. So it would be massive. I think there'd be question marks again over Osorio, because that's just what the Mexico national team job involves. And yeah, it wouldn't be nice. It wouldn't be nice. It's not the kind of natural flow of things as we look kind of a week from that game, or a little less than a week. It'd be a bit of a surprise, to be honest.
U.S. beats Mexico in the U.S. Mexico already lost,
but
Chile.
Just one quick thing about one thing Nate said, which I thought was interesting about. It's not been as bigged up as much as other games, US-Mexico games. This one, and it's just interesting to see the reason. I think one of the reasons is because Mexico are doing well in qualifying, so there's not that urgency that we've seen in the last few. But also, the week after, Mexico playing Ronaldo and Portugal, so I think people are really excited about Mexico stepping out of the region and seeing what they've got. And yeah, I just think that it's because Mexico's on top of it. And I think, I think it just kind of takes the notch of the intensity down very slightly.
Yeah,
it means they're ripe for the beating, right?
Well, really quickly on that too, just to wrap things up about this. I mean, and it's also because, I know there are clearly times, especially in the recent past, where the U.S. men's national team are better than Mexico. It could be in the near future. You never know. The U.S. men's national team could also exceed stuff from the Mexican national team. But I think the big deal for the Mexican national team is not doing well in CONCACAF. Mexico has always done well in CONCACAF. It's excelling outside of CONCACAF. It's doing well in the Confederations Cup, where the only title they have outside of CONCACAF is that Confederations Cup title in 1999, which was in Mexico. So obviously the big thing here isn't showing that they're the big dog in CONCACAF. We know right now at the moment they are that. It's if they can potentially make that final match, maybe even somehow win that championship, the Confederations Cup, which I'm not anticipating. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think that's the big deal here for them.
All right, prediction time. Let's put it out there. What do we have, Tom?
I think Mexico's 6 points out of the 2 games.
Naib?
6 points. Yeah, I'll predict that they'll be the 6 points. We're predicting the result against the U.S.
Both now. I mean, Tom already took it off. Yeah. All right. Well, 6 points, and then obviously you win against the U.S. I guess maybe score 2. We'll put it out there.
Okay. The score against the U.S. I say Mexico 3-0 against the U.S.
Whoa, I like it.
Cesar.
Even though I just like what Naive said, I'm going to say that Mexico beats Honduras 3-1, and then they tie the U.S. 1-1.
All right. And Mr. Nate?
I am going to pretty much replicate the exact prediction of my San Diego compadre right there. I'm saying Mexico beat Honduras and 1-1 draw with the United States at Azteca with a stunning goal from none other than the 18-year-old wonder kid, Christian
Marquez.
I'm going with, man, I kind of want to just say tie Honduras and win in Mexico and win against the U.S. just to go against everybody. No, I think Mexico is going to beat Honduras and not be an easy win against the U.S. I think the U.S. is going to go in there, but I feel maybe like a 1-0 and beat the U.S. and get those 6 points going into it. So give us your predictions here on the chat. It should be fun. And it's a little hard to talk about it because whatever happens in the Honduras games, could change a lot. If Mexico is cruising, beats Honduras 5-0, in Mexico City, and then we get them ready to go with the U.S., I don't know if that will hurt them or what, but it could be completely different. It's kind of hard to predict.
I almost feel like that would be a blessing for the U.S.
Yeah,
for Mexico like, to blow out Honduras and then kind of roll in.
That's when Mexico has always done bad against the U.S. when they're like so confident and they don't take it seriously. I've always felt that, and that's pretty much the whole 2000s for my liking. Was when we'll beat them because we bet them the last 40 years, and then 2002 happened. Oh, I brought it up. All right.
I didn't bring it up. You brought it up. You brought it up, not me.
Really quick. I know that we're already going a little bit past, but I wanted to get to really quick. Jesse Gonzalez has accepted the call up to the United States for the Gold Cup, which was something very surprising, at least on our side of the Mexican, news, and especially what we've been hearing from him. I feel that we've seen him either tweet that he was so grateful to be in the U20s. I know, Tom, you got a chance to talk to him in 2015, interview him, and then all of a sudden we get confirmed he's going to accept the call for the Gold Cup. Tom, can you tell us a little bit of what's happening with Jesse Gonzalez? And is this going to be another Yarbrough where, well, see you later, the U.S. is going to nab him and maybe not even play him?
I don't think so. I think he's younger. I think he's a very good keeper. I think that he's consistently said that he prefers Mexico over the States. You can't blame him because he's been called up into the United States. And, I've interviewed over the years a lot of Mexican-American players who, before they've kind of got into the international career, Joe Corona, for example, played for Mexico first. Edgar Castillo played for Mexico first. It's not something that's new. I think that Jesse Gonzalez, if you were to say which team do you want to play for, I think he'd say Mexico. I think that's what he's consistently said over the years. But then again, these are professional players, and when they go into the professional environment and they say, "What's best for my career?" Well, what's best for his career is to play in a World Cup, is to get international experience, because you get bigger wages, the chance to move on to bigger clubs, and you can't blame the kid for it. He's been called up into this Gold Cup squad. He might not even be in the squad, so this might just be all a big false alarm.
Why do that?
Because he wants to play international football.
No, I'm talking about on the U.S. I mean,
on the US side, they want to get desperate. He's a good goalkeeper.
Nate, on the U.S. side, I mean, isn't that like? Here's how way I take it, and I'm sorry. If right now Mexico's going to go, oh my gosh, let's cap somebody and take the third, let's say Cota, away from a squad just to cap a player that really doesn't deserve it right now. Because I don't think that Jesse Gonzalez is a third keeper, or are they that desperate? Nate, as a U.S. fan, don't you kind of get like, dude, if he's good enough, let's do it, or are you so desperate enough to grab a kid like Jesse Gonzalez?
Again, sorry I'm going to apologize straight to Cesar. This does come back to kind of the human side of it for me, as far as him needing to look at what's best for his career and what decision.
I think there's a huge difference between going to a different national team when you're a Mexican American or going to Rangers, though.
Well, okay, well then in this case, this is very much him needing to decide what's best for him as an individual. And yeah, it's a big question of commitment involved. And look, the U.S. men's national team goalkeeping has been an afterthought for over 2 decades. Goalkeeping was what opened doors for U.S. players playing in Europe, going back to even with Tony Meola, Casey Keller, Friedel, Howard, the lot. that is wound to a close. That generation has wound to a close. The U.S. need their next goalkeeper. I don't know if it's Jesse Gonzalez as far as the guy of the future, but Brad Guzan and Tim Howard and Nick Raimondo and even William Yarbrough and David Bingham. I mean, you're talking about a number of aging players there and a number of goalkeepers who I feel like Jesse Gonzalez is very much in their caliber department. So I think the U.S. need him. I do think the U.S. need him, and we'll see how much he wants to be a part of the U.S. team. I can't necessarily speak on the Mexico side. I don't think he'd be a top 3 goalkeeper right now for Mexico. No.
But also Mexico have got very few goalkeepers under the age of like 25 who are playing.
It's a similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, Hugo Gonzalez at Monterrey, he doesn't convince me. You know, Layud, I don't think absolutely convinces me either. You know, Jesse Gonzalez, I mean...
Gudiño, we really don't know what's been going on in Portugal.
Again, the only thing about Gudiño I know is from Cesar.
Look, we don't know much about Gudiño right now. I think Jesse Gonzalez has to be patient and realize how difficult it is. You know, he's 22. And look how difficult it was for Guillermo Ochoa to be a starting national team.
He's still not a regular
He's still not even a regular starter. It's so difficult to become the number 1 goalkeeper in Mexico, you know, and there's a lot of factors, you know, the coaching changes, this lack of consistency in the processes. That's one of the things. Another thing, I mean, I think he has to realize that to get to that level, to be among the top 3, lots of things have to work. Look at Cota. Cota in the last 2 years, 3 years, I would say, made his way to the national team. Now he's actually privileged, and he's a 3rd goalkeeper, and he's 29. I mean, it's a long process. I mean, he has to be really patient. If he really wants to play for the Mexican national team, he's 22 right now. It's a far shot. It's a long shot. I mean, maybe in the Gold Cup he could have been called up, but you know, it's all long shot. And I do understand, you know, it's running out, but the new goalkeeper, the new generation will start, you know, 2018 after the World Cup, you know, and it's still time to sort of delve into who will be the next ones to take over the goal in Mexico as well.
Well, it's funny how it just kind of both sides are like, no, Jesse said yes to us. No, Jesse said yes to us. Jesse's just sitting there. Yeah, I said yes to both of you.
Okay, I was just getting a call from Jesse Gonzalez. Hold on, I gotta take this.
So, Jesse saying, all right. Well, there's that Jesse. So just kind of, it's kind of funny how it kind of goes back and forth, and you know, the U.S. media is just like, yeah, he said yes, and it's good to kind of clarify that. But thank you for that perspective, Nate. I mean, if they need him and he'll take that on a personal level that he wants to be there, go for it. I mean, we saw Edgar Castillo play for both teams, right? You know, it's diehard Mexico fan. All of a sudden, all right, goes back to, I mean, playing for Mexico and then plays for the U.S. So it can happen, and we're not in that situation. So why even judge? But no, I don't think they're in that. Jesse is maybe top 5 right now for me. I don't think so. But Mexico is going into 2 different tournaments. Take the top 3 and then take the other 3. Maybe not even play. For him to get capped, he has to play, and it's got to be in a national team. So.
And cap tying a goalkeeper is not as easy as cap tying a field player that you can just throw on for a 3-minute cameo at the end of a match. Although, if there's one manager who would know how to cap tie goalkeepers in a tournament or in competitive play, it would definitely be Juan Carlos Osorio.
Well, there we go. All right, guys. I know we're getting past, but let's Mexico U-20. If you were able to stay up last night or really, really early, Mexico lost against England. Lo dejaron con todo, many people were saying, but throughout the tournament, that last touch, Naive, you've always been really good with the U17s, U20, the youth level. We've seen that Mexico was struggling scoring goals. I think only beat one of the worst teams in U20 history with I forget the name of the country. I didn't even remember.
Vanuatu.
Yeah, Vanuatu. You know, they almost barely beat them. And then going into England with 10 men in the 70th minute, it looked like Mexico was getting 4 or 5 chances, but nobody's blowing. No one's going crazy like we have. It looks like we finally stopped and let these kids if they don't go full, if they're not, winning the World Cup like it was, a little bit ago, a while ago that we expected. Mexico had a good showing, and it looks like there's some future great players that are coming up, but nothing to go crazy about and not put so much pressure on these kids.
Yeah. We just got to figure out and see which of these players that stood out. Of course, I think the one that stands out is Edson Alvarez because of his his playing time in America helped them. I think that it's part of the development, the planning, the long-term planning. You're investing a lot of money in the youth teams, but you're not giving them chances in the first division. You're not giving first team minutes that much. For example, Ronaldo Cisneros is a player that we've been talking for the past 3 years, but he doesn't get that first team minutes with Santos. And that does affect the development, because I think if Ronaldo Cisneros might have had, 2,000 first division minutes heading into this World Cup, he would have been knocking more goals in, So I think we got the investment is there, but I think these players need more playing time in first division. And those rules have to come from the league. And of course, the league, as we know, are not promoting giving opportunities to young Mexican players.
Yeah, we'll see what the influence of the 9-9 rule will also do for the league.
Thing
as
as opposed to
10-8 to the 9-9. So we'll see what happens there, especially with a player like Cisneros, who you do want to see get more minutes. The player got a couple goals in that tournament as well.
All right, well, there you go. The U20s, and at least the good thing is that we're not staying all the way up. But can you imagine the U20, the Mexico games, and then coming up? It'll be lots to worry about, especially you guys are the writers. Okay, let's end with a fun question. We have a U.S. fan. We have obviously Mexico versus U.S. is coming up in the weekend. But if you could take one player from El Tri, Nate, one player only, to enhance the U.S. men's national team, what player would you take?
This is a very, very tough one for me. It would be between two players, and they are Chuckytito and Chucky Lozano. I would take one of those two players. Can I just take both? Can I just have both? Let me just have both.
Chuckytito.
We got plenty of wingers.
Let me take. I get Chuckytito. Come on. No, and look, I want to quickly explain why this is, because with Pulisic on the U.S. side, I talk about his flair, his talent on the ball, his ability as just a pure footballer and a skill player. There's a staggeringly low amount of these true game changer types, not only in the U.S. team, a few more in the Mexico team, but I feel like there's a staggeringly low amount in CONCACAF right now in comparison to the past. Those type of creative young players that can grab a game by the scruff of the neck, do something creative, the way Chuckytito did against Ireland, the way Chuckytito did against Venezuela back last summer in the Copa America. Those are players that I want in this region. Those are players I want to see playing and representing the CONCACAF region. So Chuckytito is my answer to that question.
Nice. Same thing to you guys. Flip it. What U.S. player would you want in Mexico, Naive and Cesar?
I think the easy answer here for me is Michael Bradley. I think he's the most overt option here, not only just because of his leadership, but also just because of right now, in that defensive midfield position for the Mexican national team, you have someone like Rafa Marquez at 38 years old, who is still possibly the starter for Mexico in that position. So I would like someone like Bradley, someone who a little bit more tenacious, someone who can be, like I said, just provide that leadership and that defensive midfield position for Mexico.
I'm going to go with
Bradley start in this hypothetical for El Tri.
Most definitely this Sunday. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
Naive, really quick, to end the show.
Well, I'm gonna pick my paisano Omar Gonzalez. I think what he's done in Pachuca has been really impressive. I think he adapted well to the Mexican game right away. I think it will be interesting to have his height is really impressive and his ball handling is also impressive. So I think if you add those two details together, he could be in the mix, definitely as one of the center backs for El Tri right now.
Someone on the chat, Mark Cosme, said I would take Jesse Gonzalez from the U.S. I would take Pulisic. I don't know what you guys are trying with Omar and Bradley. I'll take.
We gotta mix it up. We gotta mix it up.
No, full crap. You would take Pulisic in a heartbeat. So I'm just whatever. I'll say it. Yeah, I'll take Pulisic in a heartbeat and put him in. With the El Tri. Here's the looking. So we'll see that. All right, guys, that's been our show. I know we went a little bit long. Thank you so much for everybody on the chat, even though you were fighting the whole time. and calling each other names. All the new viewers that we saw that I'm sure are U.S. men national team, dive in there, get to know the Mexican national team, especially here on the Mexican Soccer Show. Follow Naive, follow Cesar, Nate. For all of the Mexican fans, where do we see your stuff? Where can we reach you? I know obviously your Twitter, but where are you writing? I know Soccer Nation. Tell us.
Yeah, soccernation.com and at Twitter at Nate Abaurrea, Abaurrea, little Basque language lesson for you there. But thanks to everybody here with FootMex Nation and everybody who is continuing this push of the hashtag Liga MX ENG movement. It's a great thing to be a part of. It's something that is really near and dear to my heart. So keep that up. Hashtag Liga MX ENG. Tom Marshall got it started a few months back, and that thing has taken off, where we have writers and broadcasters from so many different outlets around this country, around Mexico, who are all coming together through a little hashtag. It's done wonders. Hashtag Liga MX ENG. Keep it going.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you again, Naive and Mexico City, and obviously the San Diego guys, Nate and Cesar. Tom had to run off, and I know he said goodbye. Say goodbye to everybody, but we'll definitely be there at the game. I know Tom's going to the games. I'll be there for the U.S. game. And keep definitely your eyes on all of the activity that we do with the Mexican Soccer Show. Thank you to Amy, who's live tweeting right now. So if you see any mistakes or anybody's, it's misspelling, that's her. So just make sure you tell her. I'm just kidding, Amy. And then also Mr. Jason Markowitz, our producer of the show here at Soccer Mexicana, who, if you have not already, definitely sign up for his emails. He gets everything of the Mexican national team, puts it together for you, so you can read it at work, and you don't have to be listening to a podcast if you don't have the time. And you can see a lot of great articles that are coming from all over, from FootMex Nation. You see FIFA 442 from all over the place. And then obviously here at FootMex Nation, your home of the Mexican national team, Liga MX, Mexicans abroad, all things related to Mexico. We'll keep it here. Monday Night Football, Mexican Soccer Show, 7 p.m. on Mondays. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Nos vemos. Hopefully, we'll be coming back next Monday and with 6 points. But we'll see how that goes. Guys, it's been real. Y nos vemos hasta la próxima. Chau, chau.